And is this week we're talking about judging teams and training competitive teams and what it means to an FFA chapter and how important this is in what we do is applying what we learn in the classroom out into the field with the FFA and Bob's had just an extreme amount of experience in teaching people to evaluate animals and working with youth through 4-H and the FFA, and I'll let him introduce himself and tell us a little bit about his experience and his role here at Auburn University.
Good morning, or good afternoon.
Sure.
Bob Ebert. I grew up in northeastern Kansas, participated in 4-H and FFA, was FFA chapter or FFA president for 2 years, and 4-H president for 2 years. So highly involved in youth development programs as a kid growing up in Kansas. Moved to Alabama, managed a cattle farm, and then had the opportunity to come to Auburn University and look after the beef teaching unit prior to completing a master's degree in adult education that allowed me to slide into this extension position that's responsible for the 4-H or for the youth animal science programs in Alabama. And that's a combination of 4-H and FFA exhibitors, based in the animal science department, and I've been in this position since 1995.
Oh, okay. Very good. And within this position, you do teach some courses, right? I know my students like to take your animal evaluation courses. What all do you teach?
That's the only course that I'm responsible for, and I kind of fell into that a little bit by accident from the standpoint of that's the course that we offer as a department to the youngsters that want to participate in livestock judging at the collegiate level.
Sure.
And you know, by and large, we don't have a lot of participation, and I've been able to take some partial teams to some contests the last couple of years. Prior to that, we had a couple of teams that competed very well at the Dixie National in Jackson, Mississippi. But that's the only course I'm responsible for, livestock judging and evaluation. And we talk about there's two things with judging that I think are important, and we have to remember. Judging is about making decisions. And making decisions is about understanding that you make this decision, it impacts you this way, and you make another decision, it impacts a different way. And so part of what we talk about in my class is the impact of decisions. And as you think about evaluating animals, your decision to place one animal ahead of another based on logical reasoning, and then in some cases oral presentation as to defending your reasoning on why you did it that way. The understanding of decision making is part of it. The second part, of course, is the anatomy and physiological, the phenotype as well as genotype of the animal helps determine the value or the merit of that particular animal.
Sure, very good. And so as far as your role with extension and your interaction with 4-H and with FFA, what does that primarily include? What are your major events or functions?
Well, in a nutshell, my primary responsibility is the 4-H animal science programs. And people probably for the most part assume that because I'm involved highly with the Alabama National Fair and the Southeastern Livestock Expo, that all I do is livestock shows, and that's not really true. But a large part of my responsibility is focused on the livestock shows, livestock events of that nature. We also do, and it's limited to 4-H members only, the State 4-H Horse Show in July in Montgomery. Excuse me. And coupled with that, I do quite a number of judging contests throughout the course of the year. And I have for the last 10 years served as chairman of the management committee of the National 4-H Livestock Judging Contest held each fall in Louisville, Kentucky.
Oh, okay, very good. Well, that's quite a big deal. I think that most of the people that are in our class here, Bob, are ag teachers, and they have some experience with training some competitive teams, and within that training some livestock evaluation teams or you know, some variation thereof. If you were, you know, you're definitely a super resource for that kind of a thing. If we're talking to a teacher who maybe has been, might not have the strongest of animal background even, but realizes the value of this, of animal evaluation and how that works with the FFA, what kind of resources or what kind of you know, where should they start?
There's various different places you can start. Probably the easiest thing to talk about is this. In February, we completed our third year of the judging clinics hosted by, started by poultry in the College of Agriculture, and this year not animal science, but the College of Ag basically took over and gave leadership to that program.
Oh, good.
And it had to do with dairy judging, livestock judging, horse judging, poultry judging, floriculture, and I think there's one other. It's a one-day event for students. It's limited, and I did 2 sessions, and we limit each session to 40 students. I had a total of, I think, 73 or 74 participate in those 2 sessions. I've got a notebook put together for that that's very comprehensive in terms of everything you kind of need to know, sample sets of example sets of reasons, some things in terms of using EPDs, expected progeny differences, the genotype concept of livestock judging and evaluation. I've got a number of those handouts that are actually notebooks that are available. That's probably the best resource in terms of what I would give out to somebody. Next weekend I've got a one-day judging clinic for coaches for 4-H livestock judging teams in Gadsden. So I'll take that book and make sure everybody gets one of those. During the clinics in February, we hand out one to each child or ag teacher that participates in it. So we've been able to kind of scatter that around the state the last 3 years.
Yeah, if a teacher happened to miss that already this year in February, could they get a hold of one of those books from you, though? Contacting you? All right, very good. And your contact information is on the Animal Science website, and I know that they could get a hold of you very easily. I think, I got a good friend that he's actually from Alabama, and he's in ag teacher education in Texas right now. His name's John Rayfield, and he was really, really into livestock evaluation and showing animals as a teacher. And he actually did his dissertation study on trying to predict from several different background factors and demographics and a lot of different things of how you could pick out a great cattle judger. And John did all this research, and he discovered that the #1 prediction factor was amount of practice.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about the reps.
Yeah.
The more you do it, the better you become. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. And so there's absolutely no substitute for practice. But beyond that, what type of resources that would you say is important for teachers to pull in for their students?
There's 2 or 3 things out there that I think are available that are just easy to get to. Sale catalogs, pictures of animals. You can take and look at pictures and discern differences. And to me, as I think about trying to start with kids, or adults for that matter, the first thing you got to do is be able to see the differences. You've got to see that an animal is structured a particular way. You've got to know where to look at those animals, on what part of their body is important in terms of evaluating. I like to tell students to evaluate from the ground up and from the rear to the front. That's one thing I think is really important. The other thing that's out there, and I think is important, there's a number of websites that now have animals on them, and there's a number of video, DVD type things that are available. And most of those websites cost you something to be able to have access.
Sure.
The one that I use a lot is www.judging101.com.
Okay. That's
one that's out there. Another one that's free for the most part is thejudgingconnection.com.
Okay.
Thejudgingconnection.com. And there's a lot of information, not just about judging, but about animal science and livestock shows, livestock events, that sort of thing. Actual video from livestock shows is on that. There's another one, and I draw the blank on EliteLivestockJudging.com, I think is the name of it. But there's a number of those out there. And then various breed associations, including the National Swine Registry, have videos that's available. The thing about the swine industry, and I think this is important to remember, the swine type changes periodically or frequently, I guess is a better way to say that. So some videos from 5 years ago